Stop chasing distractions and start sharpening the only asset that truly changes outcomes: yourself. Focus on yourself. Until You Win is a concise roadmap to transform habits, attention, and courage into measurable results, so you stop reacting to life and begin designing it. This book strips away noise, gives you practical rituals, and trains the mindset that wins quietly and consistently. Chapter 1. The Pivot to Self-Focus. The first move in any transformation is the decision to stop looking outward for validation and to begin looking inward for capacity. This chapter is an argument and a protocol. The single most productive shift you can make is reallocating your attention from distractions and other people's expectations toward your own skills, habits, and decisions. Focus on yourself. Until You Win begins by describing the landscape of modern distraction, constant notifications, social comparison, and a culture that equates busyness with progress and then offers the pivot. Attention is a resource. Treat it like capital. Start by conducting a ruthless audit of where your attention actually goes over 7 days. Record time blocks in 3 categories: energy builders, necessary transactions, and attention leaks. Builders are activities that increase your capacity: deep work, learning, restorative movement, and meaningful conversation. Necessary transactions are chores that keep life functional: bills, errands, short coordination calls. Attention leaks are endless scrolling, reactive email checking, gossip, and low-value meetings. The median person discovers that leaks consume far more hours than necessary, and that their identity and mood ride the ebb and flow of those leaks. The chapter then teaches a practical reallocation plan. Step 1. Set a 90-day horizon with one dominant objective that matters materially to your life: skill development, a project launch, health transformation, or a creative output. This single objective becomes the filter for daily choices. Step 2. Build blocks. Protect 2 daily deep focus blocks of at least 60 minutes each, dedicated to work that compounds. During these blocks, eliminate all external interruptions: phone in another room, notifications off, a visible sign that you are unavailable. Step 3. Implement micro-boundaries. Time box email to twice daily, decline meetings that do not have an agenda or a clear deliverable, and create a simple decision rule for social invitations tied to your objective. Step 4. Create feedback loops. Measure outputs, not inputs. Instead of celebrating hours logged, count pages written, problems solved, clients contacted, pull requests merged, kilometers trained. Feedback must be honest, frequent, and metrics aligned. The chapter emphasizes identity shifting. Small, repeated actions over months change how you see yourself. Each protected hour of deep work is a deposit into a new identity: someone who makes, creates, and produces value, rather than someone who consumes attention. There is a psychological contingency plan for slips. Expect resistance, boredom, and irritation early on. Describe these experiences as transition friction and not failure. Use brief pre-planned resets, 5 minutes of breathing, a walk, or a micro-task that yields a quick win, to return to the blocks. The chapter closes with an exercise. Craft a 1-sentence, unapologetic mission for the next 90 days that begins with "I will focus on myself by," and ends with a measurable outcome. Post it where you will see it every morning and say it aloud before starting your first deep work block. This ritual anchors the pivot from distraction into disciplined self-focus, and it sets the psychological tone for the entire transformation. Chapter 2. Building foundational routines that multiply results. Once the pivot is decided, the next task is to build routines that transform intermittent effort into sustained momentum. This chapter reframes routines not as restrictive chains, but as leverage multipliers. They convert willpower into automatic systems, so your best behavior becomes default. Start by identifying 3 foundational routines that will support your 90-day objective: a morning prime, a focused execution block, and an evening consolidation. The morning prime is a short set of actions that moves you into competence and agency. Water, a single micro-exercise, 5 minutes of targeted reading, and a 3-line planning note that defines your top 3 priority outcomes for the day. The focused execution block follows later when cognitive energy peaks. This is where the heavy lifting happens. The evening consolidation is for reflection, not rumination, a rapid review of what worked, what didn't, and one micro-adjustment for the next day. The chapter details how to design each routine to minimize decisions, standardize meals, simplify clothing choices, predefine work templates, and create if-then rules for common derailers. Next, the text explores habit stacking and the importance of tiny thresholds. A 15-minute initial practice built daily beats a 90-minute sporadic session. Begin with micro-commitments that are always achievable: 2 Pomodoros of focused work, a 5-minute breathing practice, a single paragraph written, and gradually scale. Consistency compounds. The author then introduces the concept of ritual friction to defend routines from social noise. Inform key people of your protected times, schedule recurring calendar blocks that appear as non-negotiable, and build small social norms, an auto-reply theme for your email that explains your focus hours. The chapter also teaches how to measure routine effectiveness, track outcome-linked metrics, not merely adherence. For a writer, metric is finished pages. For an entrepreneur, calls booked or minimum viable tests launched. Use weekly and monthly cadence reviews to prune routines that no longer serve and deepen those that do. Crucially, the chapter dispels the moralism around rest. Rest is not indulgence, but capital preservation. Embed short recovery rituals within the day: walks, timed breaks, micro-sleeps, and a longer weekly restorative window. The final section addresses variability and contingency planning. Life will disrupt your routines. Design flexible fallbacks, a 20-minute micro-work session when time collapses, or a portable reading list during travel, so momentum never fully stalls. By the end of this chapter, the reader understands routines as scalable infrastructure. Once established, these patterns free up attention for creative, high-leverage work, multiplying results without multiplying stress. Chapter 3. Mastering attention, tools, blocks, and boundaries. Attention is the operative currency of modern achievement. Mastering it requires technical systems, personal discipline, and environmental design. This chapter presents an actionable toolkit for reclaiming and directing attention toward high-leverage tasks. It begins by introducing attention economics. Every stimulus competes for finite cognitive bandwidth, so you must be intentional about selectors, what you allow onto your stage. First, implement structural tools, a single capture system for incoming requests, one inbox or app, a daily triage ritual that categorizes items into do, defer, delegate, or delete, and a weekly planning session that aligns your schedule with your 90-day objective. Second, create attention sanctuaries, physical spaces optimized for focus, clean desk, neutral stimuli, comfortable lighting, and device policies such as airplane mode during deep work, website blockers for known temptations, and a work phone that is separate from social devices if possible. Third, quantify attention in minutes, not moods. Set measurable targets for focused minutes per day and aim to increase them by 5 to 10% weekly. Fourth, practice intentional batching. Group similar tasks to reduce context switching, emails, calls, administrative work, and reserve creative thinking for uninterrupted blocks. Fifth, adopt a 2-minute rule for small tasks. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it. This prevents clutter but does not replace scheduled deep work. The chapter then addresses cognitive recovery. Attention is not inexhaustible. Introduce the ultradian rhythm model. Work in 60 to 90-minute cycles, followed by 10 to 20-minute recovery to maintain peak output. Recovery can be active, walks, stretching, or passive, brief meditation. Next, learn to create social boundaries. Practice concise scripts to deflect unproductive interruptions, set office hours, and negotiate meeting agendas in advance. The chapter provides language templates for saying no gracefully and for requesting focused time without guilt. Technology is treated as servant, not master. Use productivity tools deliberately, but avoid optimization traps where you spend more time managing tools than doing work. Finally, the chapter offers a cognitive resilience drill. Intentionally expose attention to controlled distractors, a noisy cafe session or intermittent alerts, for short tests to build resistance and then return to sanctuary practice. Mastering attention is a blend of design, discipline, and practice. Executed well, it converts available hours into significantly higher output and steadily elevates your capacity to win. Chapter 4. Skill Stacking. What to learn and why it matters. Winning depends less on single talents and more on the right combination of complementary skills. This chapter defines skill stacking, the deliberate selection and sequencing of skills that, when combined, provide disproportionate advantage. The core idea is that rare combinations beat rare singularity. Being great at one thing is valuable, but being very good at several adjacent synergistic skills creates unique leverage. Begin by mapping your domain. List 5 core competencies relevant to your objective and rate your current level in each. Identify adjacent skills that multiply your impact. For a marketer, that might be copywriting, analytics, and basic design. For an entrepreneur, product intuition, sales empathy, and basic finance. Prioritize learning that has high transferability and scarcity. Next, adopt a rule of constrained breadth with deliberate depth. Choose 2 skills for deep mastery, months of deliberate practice, and 2 supporting skills for competency-level work. The chapter explains learning sequencing. Start with a foundational skill that reduces friction in learning subsequent ones, then layer complexity. Use micro-experiments to validate skill value before large investment. Try a weekend project, a short course, or a gig that tests whether the skill materially helps. The chapter emphasizes deliberate practice techniques tailored to each skill, feedback loops, spaced repetition, and measurable drills, and the importance of immediate application, practice in real projects, not isolated drills. It also teaches how to document and package stacked skills into unique offers, productized services, a portfolio, a signature talk that raise perceived value. Time management for skill stacking is covered. Rotate learning sprints of 4 to 6 weeks with outcome-focused deliverables to avoid endless accumulation without application. Finally, the chapter explores how to leverage skills in negotiation, collaboration, and systems building. Use your stack to automate income, lead teams, or design products that scale. Skill stacking, when strategic, turns effort into a distinctive edge that makes your focused self unstoppable in competitive environments. Chapter 5. Emotional Mastery for Relentless Consistency. Consistency is the product of emotional systems as much as logistical ones. This chapter tackles the interior work required to sustain daily discipline when motivation wanes, setbacks occur, or intrudes. Emotional mastery is about regulating mood, harnessing motivation, and converting desire into repeatable action. Start with the concept of mood-proof habits. Routines designed to require minimal willpower and to trigger identity reinforcement. Examples include preparatory rituals, lay out clothes and materials the night before, environment nudges, visible habit cues, and habit pairings, stacking a new action onto an established one. The chapter introduces cognitive reframing tools, practice naming the short-term discomfort accurately and then recasting it as an ally. This discomfort is evidence I'm growing. And use a micro-goal setting to break intimidating tasks into instant wins. Next, implement an emotional scoreboard. Track 3 effective metrics daily: stress, energy, and satisfaction on a simple 1 to 5 scale, and correlate them with outputs to learn what emotional conditions precede your best performance. The chapter provides breathing and brief mindfulness protocols to reset effect in under 3 minutes, plus counterproductive thought interrupts, templates to shift rumination into planning. Also covered is the social regulation of emotion. Cultivate at least 1 accountability partner for hard commitments and 1 cheerleader for moral support. Design brief accountability scripts so check-ins are action-focused, not venting sessions. When setbacks occur, use a specific recovery ritual. Pause, write a 1-paragraph lesson, list 3 micro-actions to regain momentum, and execute the first immediately. This ritual reduces the likelihood of cascade failure. Finally, cultivate long-term motivation by tethering daily discipline to transcendent purpose. Revisit the 90-day mission and the larger life aim monthly to keep small habits connected to meaning. Emotional mastery does not eliminate negative feelings but creates robust pathways to continue doing the work that leads to winning regardless of temporary moods. Chapter 6. The Power of Deep Work and Compounded Focus. Deep work is the engine that turns focused attention into disproportionate results. It is the behavioral discipline of producing high-quality output in concentrated, uninterrupted stretches. In this chapter, we move from theory to a concrete operating system for daily deep work that composes directly into winning outcomes. First, define what deep work means for your 90-day objective. Is it writing, coding, client development, training, or creative synthesis? Clarity of purpose determines the tasks you will protect. Next, schedule immovable deep blocks in your calendar. These are appointments with yourself that you treat like client meetings. 2 blocks per day of 60 to 120 minutes are the minimum for substantive progress. Elite performers often stack 3 such blocks. Use calendar descriptions that include the specific deliverable for that block. Draft 800 words of Chapter 3, or complete Module 1 prototype. The specificity reduces fuzzy effort and forces output orientation. Third, design an entry ritual that primes the brain for focus. A 2-minute breathing pattern, a 1-line intention, and an immediate micro-checklist of materials required. Rituals reduce startup friction and accelerate cognitive engagement. Fourth, remove friction by preparing materials and removing triggers. Place phone in another room, close irrelevant tabs, use a single full-screen app for the task, and pre-open only necessary references. Fifth, manage energy around deep work. Place these blocks during your personal peak energy windows identified earlier and follow each block with a genuine 10 to 20-minute recovery. Recovery is not optional. It consolidates work and prevents burnout. Sixth, measure output in discrete units and track a running weekly total. For writers, track words edited. For developers, track features tested. For salespeople, track proposal drafts sent. The weekly cadence reveals momentum and allows tactical course correction. Seventh, cultivate boredom tolerance. The ability to sit in sustained focus without seeking novelty is a trainable skill. Practice progressive overload. Then focus blocks slowly and reward yourself for resisting distractions. Eighth, implement shutdown routines that close the cognitive loop at the end of workday. Review what you finished, note tomorrow's top 3 priorities, and declare a clean stop. This prevents mental residue and allows richer recovery. Ninth, protect deep work socially. Communicate your protected hours to colleagues and family, set clear response expectations, and create a visible sign you are in focus mode. Finally, institutionalize weekly reflection. Review which deep work blocks produce the highest leverage and redesign the next week to prioritize those tasks. Over months, protected deep work compounds like invested capital. Small daily deposits accumulate into breakthroughs. The discipline of deep work makes the difference between busy people and productive winners. Adopt it consistently and you will watch capability and results expand in ways that attention scattered across tasks never will. Chapter 7. Advanced Habit. Engineering for Unstoppable Momentum. Habits are the invisible architecture of achievement. Engineering them strategically transforms effort into automatic performance. This chapter maps a practical habit engineering framework to make your focused life inevitable rather than intermittently aspirational. Start with identity-based habits. Instead of setting surface-level goals, write daily, anchor habits to identity claims. I am a writer who ships consistently. Identity shifts change how you interpret success and failure. Next, use tiny starts to overcome resistance. Reduce the initiation cost to a sliver. Write 1 sentence, open the code editor for 1 minute, or do 1 push-up. The momentum of starting often carries you far beyond the micro-commitment. Pair tiny starts with habit stacking by attaching new micro-habits to established routines. After I make morning coffee, I will write 1 paragraph, so the cue is already present. Then design habit chains that lead to ritualized performance. Link a warm-up, core work, and a brief consolidation into a repeating loop that creates neuro-associative patterns. Another principle is timed escalation. Deliberately increase the habit's intensity in set increments. Add 10% duration or difficulty each week to maintain growth without catastrophic friction. Use immediate rewards that are aligned, not counterproductive. The reward for a writing block might be a 5-minute walk or a satisfying log entry, not sugar or doom scrolling. Track habits visually with a streak system and weigh adherence more than perfection. Consistency outperforms occasional excellence. For accountability, connect habits to social consequence. A short daily snapshot shared with an accountability partner or a public commitment reduces slippage. Address cheating early by setting a one-strike repair mechanism. If you miss a habit, you perform a corrective micro-action immediately. This reduces moral licensing. Habit pruning is as important as creation. Remove low-value rituals that siphon time. Finally, design seasonal habit cycles, intensive skill sprints for 4 to 8 weeks, followed by restorative phases to consolidate learning and prevent erosion. Engineered this way, habits become the machinery of relentless consistency. Chapter 8. Systems for Learning. Faster. Feedback, experimentation, and iteration. Learning is the fuel of strategic advantage. The faster you learn, the quicker you adapt and win. This chapter gives you an operational learning loop, hypothesis, micro-experiment, data collection, and iteration applied to skill development, product market fit, or personal growth. Start by converting your objectives into testable hypotheses. If I practice deliberate retrieval for 15 minutes daily, my retention of X will improve by 30% in 4 weeks. A clear success metric prevents vague effort. Design micro-experiments with low downside, short, time-boxed trials that yield informative signals. Run multiple small experiments concurrently to avoid single-point failure. Use simple metrics that are directly tied to outcomes rather than vanity measures, completion of actionable tasks, observed behavior changes, or repeatable wins. Collect data with minimal friction, daily one-line logs, quick checklists, or short recordings. Then analyze weekly. Did the metric change in the desired direction? If yes, scale slowly. If no, iterate or abandon. Embrace rapid cycle times. Shorter experiments lead to faster learning and less sunk cost. Another core practice is active reflection. Document not just outcomes, but causal hypotheses about why a test worked or failed. These causal maps compound into clearer mental models. Seek external calibration regularly. Coaches, mentors, or peer review accelerate validity by exposing blind spots. Also diversify analogues, apply ideas from unrelated domains to create novel approaches. Cross-pollination often yields breakthroughs. Build knowledge artifacts that are immediately reusable. Templates, scripts, code snippets, or short playbooks, so learning immediately turns into leverage. Finally, incorporate anti-experimentation intentionally. Run tests that challenge your assumptions to avoid confirmation bias. The faster you iterate with disciplined small bets and honest measurement, the more quickly you refine what wins. Learning as a system converts repeated experiments into compounding advantage. Chapter 9. Negotiation, Influence, and Social Leverage. Winning is social. Your ability to negotiate, influence, and orchestrate others multiplies personal skill into collective outcomes. This chapter teaches high-leverage social mechanics that protect your focus while expanding reach. Start with clarity of value proposition, what you offer and why it matters, because influence without value is unsustainable. Prepare negotiation ranges and fallback positions in advance. This externalizes emotion and prevents reactive concessions. Use calibrated questions to discover counterpart constraints and to make them reveal priorities. Questions like, what's most important about this outcome for you? Reveal leverage. Practice principled negotiation. Anchor to objective standards. Create options for mutual gain and separate people from problems. In influence, craft arguments that combine logic, social proof, and narrative. People move for reasons that address head, heart, and identity. Strategic reciprocity matters. Offer small, relevant favors before asking for big returns. This builds obligation and goodwill. Social timing is a subtle lever. Ask for commitments after small initial wins to increase compliance. Use structure to scale influence, templates for outreach, short decks for persuasion, and rehearsal scripts for key conversations. Protect your attention by delegating low-leverage social tasks and automating outreach where possible, while reserving high-skill negotiations for your direct engagement. Finally, cultivate network density. Invest in key relationships that interconnect across domains. A well-placed introduction often creates exponential opportunities. Mastering social leverage lets you convert focused skill into multiply-scaled outcomes while preserving the core discipline of self-focus. Chapter 10. Health as Performance. Infrastructure. Your body is the non-negotiable infrastructure for sustained focus and output. Optimizing it is not decadence, but strategy. This chapter reframes health behaviors as high-return investments, sleep as cognitive compounding, nutrition as steady fuel, movement as metabolic tuning, and stress management as volatility reduction. Start with sleep. Fix a biologically consistent sleep window and build a bedtime ritual that reduces light exposure and pre-sleep cognitive activation. Read a physical book, avoid screens, and perform a 5-minute wind-down journal. Track sleep quality for objective feedback and use small changes, temperature, timing, light, to optimize. Nutrition follows. Prioritize steady blood glucose with protein, fiber, and healthy fats to prevent energy troughs that kill focus. Practice simple meal templates to reduce decision friction, a repeatable set of breakfasts and lunches that are nutritious and fast. Movement is policy, daily moderate-intensity exercise, high-intensity intervals twice weekly for metabolic boosts, and mobility sessions for long-term durability. Movement also primes creativity and mood. Schedule short walks after deep work to consolidate thinking. Hydration and micronutrients are not optional. Mild deficits erode cognition. Finally, integrate deliberate recovery practices, breath work, short naps, sauna or cold exposure where feasible, and periodic weeks of reduced load to prevent burnout. Health routines should be non-negotiable calendar items, blocked like meetings, because inconsistent health habits create variability that sabotages focus. When your body reliably supports your mind, your ability to sustain focus, resilience, and high-quality output becomes predictable rather than luck-driven. Chapter 11. Financial Systems for Focused People. Sustainable focus requires financial stability and simple systems that reduce stress and free cognitive bandwidth. In this chapter, you will design minimalist financial infrastructure, automated savings, simple budgets, and contingency buffers that protect your runway and allow risk-taking in your work. Start with visibility, one place where you track cash flow and runway. Automate essential flows, bills, savings, and retirement contributions. Create an emergency buffer sized appropriately for your responsibilities, 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, so small shocks do not derail your progress. For investments in your winning objective, design a separate growth fund with controlled allocation and rules for deployment. Treating investment capital as distinct prevents emotional reaction to routine volatility. Adopt simple spending rules that align with values, for instance, the 50-30-20 split adjusted to your goals, or a buy less to invest more heuristic. Use small experiments for new income streams, test an offering with a narrow pilot before scaling, and track unit economics carefully. Finally, build recurring financial reviews, monthly snapshot and quarterly strategy meeting to align resources with mission. Financial systems are not about riches, they are about removing friction so you can focus on high-leverage work without low-level anxiety. Chapter 12. Leadership of the Self. decision-making protocols, and moral clarity. At the core of focused mastery is the ability to make clear, consistent decisions aligned with deeper values. This chapter offers decision protocols, workflows you use for recurring high-stakes choices, and a framework for moral clarity that prevents drift. Implement a decision taxonomy, classify choices by reversibility and impact, and assign different processes accordingly. For high-impact irreversible decisions require explicit evidence, scenario mapping, and a 72-hour reflective pause. For reversible, low-impact choices, adopt rapid trial and error. Build a decision playbook, templates, checklists, and pre-mortems that institutionalize high-quality reasoning under pressure. Moral clarity requires articulating non-negotiable values, 3 principles that guide trade-offs, and using them as filters in decisions about partnerships, revenue models, and time allocation. When choices conflict, default to the value hierarchy rather than emotional convenience. Also, practice public accountability for major decisions. Share your rationale with a mentor or peer to incorporate external critique and reduce blindness. Leadership of the self is about building robust internal governance, so your attention remains the scarce asset it must be. Chapter 13. Creating productized value, turning skill into scalable offerings. To win sustainably, you must convert focused expertise into structures that scale, products, courses, templates, or repeatable services. This chapter walks you through creating productized value, identify high-demand problems you can solve, design a minimum viable product that captures the core solution, and instrument quick feedback loops to iterate. Favor simple offers with clear outcomes and predictable delivery. Standardize workflows, checklists, and templates to reduce delivery friction. Price for value, not hours. Charge for outcomes when possible. Use pilot customers to validate and refine messaging, then systematize onboarding and delivery for scale. Productization converts your self-focus into leverage. It lets your expertise reach many while preserving your attention for strategic growth. Chapter 14. Managing complexity. Systems. Thinking for daily execution. As your projects compound, complexity rises. This chapter teaches you systems thinking tools to manage complexity without losing focus. Flowcharts, feedback loops, and modular design. Decompose large outcomes into independent modules that can be developed, tested, and improved in parallel. Use explicit interfaces, APIs, templates, or handoff protocols, so modules integrate predictably. Monitor key system-level metrics that act as early warning signals and design fail-safes that prevent small issues from cascading. Complexity managed well becomes an engine. Complexity unmanaged becomes chaos. Use simplicity as an operating value. Prefer designs that are easy to understand, communicate, and replicate. Chapter 15. The art of saying no and protecting your time. Saying no is the decisive skill that protects your focus. It is the primary way you enforce priorities. This chapter gives you scripts, frameworks, and rituals for graceful refusal that preserve relationships while defending attention. Practice a short, 3-part refusal script. Appreciation for the ask, clear boundary statement tied to priority, and an alternative or timeline for reconsideration. For repeated intrusions, institutionalize policies, office hours, meeting agendas, and a simple decision rubric for accepting collaborations. Use automated tools and delegation to offload low-value asks quickly. Saying no is not selfish, it is an enabler of results for the commitments you actually choose to keep. Chapter 16. Momentum engines, scaling. Small wins into breakthroughs. Momentum is not mystical, it is engineered. The core idea of this chapter is simple and practical. Small, consistent wins are the raw material of major breakthroughs, and your job is to build repeatable engines that transform tiny victories into exponential progress. Begin by defining what a win actually means for your 90-day mission. Be specific and measurable. A win might be complete one publishable article, ship a working MVP feature, or add 5 new paying users. Once wins are definable, reverse engineer the smallest possible action that reliably produces one win. For writers, that may be write 500 words focused on the main idea. For founders, it may be send 5 outreach emails with a single A/B subject line. The fundamental practice is to lower the activation energy until starting becomes trivial. Momentum is born the moment you make starting unavoidable. Next, create micro-feedback loops that reward completion, not perfection. A win must be visible and celebrated immediately. Log it, mark it on a streak calendar, or send a one-line message to an accountability partner. The neural payoff from marking progress compounds motivation far more effectively than self-criticism about unfinished work. Build sequences of wins into momentum chains. Design short daily rituals where one win naturally leads to the next. For example, finish a 500-word draft, then spend 10 minutes editing a previous paragraph. Publishing confidence from the first action fuels the second. These chains should be deliberately short, 3 to 5 steps, so completion is cognitively satisfying. Third, exploit the power of system redundancy. Don't rely on a single engine. Create parallel micro-engines, writing, outreach, learning, that can each produce small wins. When one engine stalls due to context, another keeps momentum alive. Fourth, instrument your engines. Measure inputs and outputs with blunt metrics. Focused minutes per win, wins per week, conversion rate from micro-actions to outcomes. Use weekly dashboards and a single metric that summarizes momentum, such as wins per week, and optimize it relentlessly. Fifth, design friction for negatives and remove friction for positives. If social media drains your focus, add friction by logging out or using a blocker. If writing produces wins, reduce friction by pre-preparing templates, keeping a next paragraph note, and having a dedicated minimal writing environment. Sixth, practice scheduled escalation. Progressively increase the target number of wins per week by a fixed percentage to avoid plateaus. This small progressive overload keeps growth deliberate rather than chaotic. Seventh, ritualize recovery within momentum. Force a short, mandatory rest after a streak of intense wins to prevent burnout and maintain quality. Finally, harness social signaling. Public streaks, small community challenges, or paired accountability double the odds of maintaining momentum because human systems prefer consistency. When momentum engines are well designed, they convert the tedium of daily practice into a rising arc of capability. Over months, the accumulation of small wins produces visible status shifts, opportunities, and confidence that look like overnight success to outsiders, but are actually the predictable payoff of engineered momentum. Chapter 17, Delegation and Leverage, Making Your Focus Go. Further delegation is not abdication. It is a multiplier. If your goal is to focus relentlessly on the few highest leverage activities, you must develop simple systems to transfer everything else without losing quality or control. Start with a ruthless inventory. List every recurring task you perform and label it by leverage and volume. High leverage, high volume tasks are the primary targets for role design. High volume, low leverage tasks are ideal for delegation. Next, standardize transferable work. Create checklists, templates, and short screen recordings that convert tacit knowledge into explicit process. A 10-minute recorded walkthrough often replaces hours of live training and immediately reduces cognitive overhead. Third, employ the two-step delegation rule. First, document a minimal procedure that yields acceptable output, Then run a short, supervised trial where you observe and correct. Do not demand perfection. Aim for reliability. Perfection kills scale. 90% competence multiplied by delegation outperforms 100% solo performance. Fourth, choose the right level of delegation. Some tasks are best automated with tools, scheduling, invoicing, backups, while others are human to human and require judgment. Match the medium to the task. Fifth, design escalation protocols, clear rules, about when a delegate should escalate to you and when to solve independently. This prevents constant interruption while preserving safety for critical decisions. Sixth, invest in a small cadre of trusted collaborators rather than a rotating cast. Over time, shared domain knowledge allows delegation to compound. The same set of people raise their competence and manage increasing responsibility with diminishing supervision. Seventh, measure delegated outcomes with blunt metrics and short feedback loops. A weekly review of delegated KPIs lets you refine processes before small issues escalate. Eighth, practice reverse delegation as training. Occasionally take a delegated task back, perform it with commentary, and then give it back. This coaching both upskills and reinforces standards. Ninth, protect your focus by building a minimum no delegation zone. Certain hours or tasks are explicitly yours and immune to interruption. Communicate these boundaries loudly and consistently. Finally, leverage external networks for asymmetric advantage. Strategic partnerships, one-off freelancers, or service providers can supply bursts of capacity without long-term overhead. When delegation and leverage are done with discipline and low-friction systems, your focused work scales far beyond what you could accomplish alone. Chapter 18, The Strategy of Breakthrough. Planning. From sprints to seasons. Breakthroughs rarely arise from random hustle. They come from aligned seasons of intense focus, deliberately structured for maximum learning and output. This chapter gives you the architecture for planning sprints nested inside seasons. A weekly sprint rhythm inside a quarterly season designed for a single, ambitious objective. Begin by selecting one high-impact seasonal goal, publish a book, launch a product, hit a revenue milestone, and divide it into a series of 4 to 6 week sprints, each with a clear deliverable. Each sprint should have a hypothesis about what will move the needle and a measurable success criterion. Within sprints, use weekly microplans with daily commitments that map directly to the sprint deliverable. Second, design intensity windows within sprints, concentrated stretches of higher than usual effort, 2 to 4 weeks, followed by short consolidation weeks for integration and rest. This prevents chronic overload and increases the probability of creative breakthroughs. Third, enforce strict evaluation rituals. At the end of each sprint, run a focused retrospective that answers 3 questions: what worked, what failed, and what will be changed next sprint. The retrospective must produce at least one actionable experiment for the next sprint. Fourth, use staged escalation for resource allocation, increase budget, external help, or learning time only after passing a minimal viability threshold to avoid sunk cost cascade. Fifth, maintain a portfolio of sprint types, some focused on growth experiments, others on refinement and infrastructure, so your season contains complementary explorations rather than a single blunt effort. Sixth, build protective social and psychological scaffolding. Inform stakeholders of your seasonal focus, reduce optional meetings, and renegotiate short-term responsibilities to protect deep work. Seventh, map risk and contingency. Identify critical dependencies and predefine fallback actions. Finally, connect seasons to a larger multi-year ambition. Seasons are not isolated bursts, but chapters in an arc of capability. When your life is organized into deliberate seasons of sprints and consolidation, you produce predictable breakthroughs instead of unpredictable flurries. Chapter 19, Resilience. Architecture. Systems to absorb failure and bounce back. Faster. Failure is inevitable. The resilient person designs systems that absorb shocks and create fast learning loops. This chapter introduces resilience architecture, a set of policies, rituals, and redundancies that protect your mission. Start by building financial, social, and operational buffers, emergency cash, at least 2 trusted advisors, and backup suppliers or systems. Next, institutionalize post-failure rituals that convert negative emotion into clear data, immediate stabilization, calm, assess, secure, quick learning, what happened and why, and incremental repair, 3 small actions to regain momentum. Avoid catastrophic thinking by normalizing the contingency plan before crises occur. Third, design graceful failure modes, ways to scale back commitments or pause projects without moral defeat. This prevents escalation and preserves optionality. Fourth, create redundancy in knowledge by documenting critical processes and training at least one person to substitute for any role you perform. Fifth, perform periodic stress tests, simulate supply chain breaks, sudden revenue drops, or public mistakes to observe system responses and improve protocols. Sixth, cultivate psychological resilience through daily practices, gratitude, short reflective journaling, and a recovery ritual after setbacks that includes micro-affirmations and a rapid re-engagement task. Seventh, adopt an anti-fragile mindset. Design systems that gain from stress by ensuring small shocks produce learning and adaptation rather than destruction. Finally, celebrate recoveries publicly within your team and privately with yourself. The narrative of recovery builds durable confidence and institutional memory. Resilience architecture turns inevitable failures into manageable, even generative, events. Chapter 20. Legacy and Elevation. Using your focus to multiply. Impact. Winning is not only accumulation, it is elevation, the intentional use of your focused capacity to raise others and create lasting value. This chapter moves beyond personal success to legacy design. Identify how your unique capabilities can scale impact across people, institutions, or markets. Start by articulating a 3 to 10-year impact statement. Who will be measurably better because you existed, and in what way? Use that statement to prioritize projects that multiply impact, teaching programs, scalable tools, repeatable frameworks, or partnerships that can extend your reach. Second, design mentorship and delegation pathways that convert individual skill into institutional skill. Train a cohort, create a curriculum, and systematize handoffs so your methods persist beyond your direct involvement. Third, productize your most valuable processes into reusable assets, courses, templates, open source tools, or repeatable services that democratize access to your best practices. Fourth, invest in community creation, small, high-trust cohorts that maintain standards, share experiments, and accelerate collective learning. Fifth, practice distributive leadership. Give away authority and resources to capable successors who can steward parts of your mission. Sixth, monitor impact metrics beyond revenue, lives changed, systems improved, and ideas propagated. Finally, plan an exit architecture. How will you step back while ensuring continuity and growth? Legacy is not an afterthought. It is the natural endpoint of disciplined focus used for collective benefit. When focus becomes a force for elevation, your wins echo beyond your lifetime. Conclusion: the focused life as a repeated choice focus is not a momentary act, but a repeated choice. Over 20 chapters, you have built a comprehensive, practical operating system for converting attention, habits, and relationships into sustained winning. Start small. Choose one engine, one delegation rule, and one seasonal goal, and apply the rituals described here for 90 days.